Mike, what do you make of all of the noise surrounding Caleb Williams?
Well, it's all noise until the coaches involved in the process for any of the teams that might be interested have a full and fair opportunity to figure out who he is, what he's about, sit down, talk to him, get to know him. You're putting a lot into him as the first overall pick in the draft. And I think for anybody who would possibly trade up with the Bears to take Caleb Williams, that, as I've said before, adds extra pressure to the player over and above just being the natural first overall pick when someone else has made an additional investment to make you their quarterback. That becomes, I think, something you need to be sure the kid can handle. And there were some signs last year of immaturity, not meeting with the media after the loss to end the regular season. So I think it just still needs to be determined who he is, what he's made of, what it's all about for him. And, groups within various organizations are going to have to come to a conclusion as to what they want to do. And they've got time to do it, but the clock is ticking and the information gathering process really begins in earnest in just 3 weeks. We'll be in Indy in 3 weeks for the scouting combine.
And we're reading everything into everything because we don't seem to have a choice right now. And now Lincoln Riley on Good Morning Football says that a reunion for Caleb Williams with Kliff Kingsbury would be great. And he said they have a great relationship. And we have to wonder, well, now is Lincoln Riley putting it in the bloodstream, something that he thinks is going to help his guy get to it's I'm having a difficult time trying to deal with this, chasing all of these various threads, because we got like 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be before something's got to give here.
Well, and the one factor that someone told me about a couple of years ago when the NIL dynamic first exploded for college football, there will be a time when a player says, do not draft me. I will sit out the whole year. I can afford it. And that's a wrinkle that you haven't seen in the past, in the rare occasions when somebody decides to say, do not draft me. And when you've got Washington picking second and the Bears picking first, what if Caleb Williams says to the Bears, do not draft me? Do not draft me. I will not play for you. I will sit out the whole year and re-enter the draft. And if you want to find out, try me. What will the Bears do if that happens?
So, but when would he do that? When would he say, what would be this sounds so bizarre to even think of it, but what would be the
optimal
or ethical business practice? Because if this is going to happen more in the age of NIL, and there's going to have to be a time where you inform with the teams that you wouldn't play for that you're not playing for them.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the word ethics, because I think the whole thing is unethical to tell a kid where he's going to spend the first 4 years of his NFL career.
Agreed.
So you fight unethic with unethic, and I think all's fair. 12 years ago, when Andrew Luck was the surefire number one overall pick in the draft to the Colts, they wanted to do their due diligence on RG3, and RG3 didn't cooperate. He didn't want to go there. That's one way that you can make it happen. If you're Caleb Williams, hey, we'd like to bring you to Chicago for, a meal and get to know you and let you see the facility. No, thanks, I'm good. That's kind of a sign. And that's why with quarterbacks particularly, I say all the time, it doesn't matter if a veteran quarterback doesn't have a no-trade clause. He doesn't need a no-trade clause because no one's going to trade for a guy that says, I really don't want to play for your sorry-ass team. So why would Caleb Williams get drafted by a team that it becomes clear to the team in the process of pre-draft he just doesn't want to be here? So I think that to the extent that he starts sending out signals sooner rather than later, that's when the Bears would have to realize, you know what, this kid just doesn't want to be here. So let's focus on the ones that want to be here instead. And that's a very subtle, low-key way to do it. I don't think it ever got out that RG3 had no interest in playing for the Colts. Now, look, both guys ended up having disappointing careers, one by choice, but it was closer than people remember between Luck and RG3. And RG3 was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2012, not Luck. But RG3 played it right. It never was out there. He didn't want to play for the Colts. It was just kind of a subtle, unspoken thing because, it would have embarrassed the Colts. So the Colts just kind of quietly pivot to Andrew Luck. He's the guy all along. Nobody ever says boo. We don't look bad. And RG3 doesn't look bad either. It can happen like that. I mean, that may be the way it plays out. All of a sudden we start hearing reports that the Bears are smitten with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, that they've discovered this is the guy. And it just kind of softly becomes the Bears passing if they already know that Caleb Williams isn't interested.
Or the connection between Shane Waldron and Justin Fields is electric, and they're going to ride with that. Like it's very interesting, like all of this stuff, Mike, like how it could play out and why it's an interesting tale of what power the players do have if they don't want to be saddled to a franchise at the beginning of their career.
And even if you do have more power now than ever before, you have to remember the PR side of it, because the fans still haven't fully embraced this idea that kids have the right. They have every right to stand up and say, I don't want to do this. And it will stick to you if you have to be the one to do it. So I think the play is, and it's just fun to talk this out. I hadn't really thought about it in these terms. If Caleb Williams is going to try to finagle a path to the Commanders, it needs to be subtle. It needs to be nuanced. And the first sign of it really would be unnamed reports suggesting that the Bears have fallen in love with someone other than Caleb Williams.
Why does it have to be subtle? Because, and I know that the stuff that's been leaked through Colin Cowherd has to do with their perception that he's a villain. And yet I agree with you. As much as I would like the Bears to have their shot at him, I'm with him, and I think he's got power and agency and standing. So why did it have to be subtle? Why can't he? Why can't he just say, "I do not want to"?
He's carrying the banner for everyone that comes behind him.
Why can't he just use a hammer?
I'd love to see somebody do it. I've been advocating that for years. I've been advocating for any and all players to push back against everything about this process that we're brainwashed into believing is an honor and a privilege. Being involuntarily told where you're going to spend the start of your career, being ripped away from your family, being forced to go live in a city where you don't want to live, work for people you don't want to work for, be part of an organization that you're convinced is hopelessly dysfunctional. How is that an honor and a privilege for anyone? And it needs to be a first one, and then it needs to happen more often. We've seen it. It's like Halley's Comet. It's like every 20 years, like clockwork. It's John Elway, and then it's Eli Manning. And now we're due for another one. But somebody needs to be the first, and then there needs to be a second one right away. It almost needs to be like the dynamic that played out within the past 10 years where guys started skipping bowl games. At first, the sky was falling, but more and more of them did it, and it just kind of overpowered the pushback. And everybody's like, well, okay, we understand why guys won't play in bowl games that are meaningless. And when Jalen Smith wrecked his knee and harmed his NFL prospects, that helped people better understand it. But you almost need to have a critical mass of players who do it before the fans and the media will say, I understand why they do it. Maybe we should respect the power that these kids have.
Mike, thanks for your time. Go do your show. We appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
That's Mike Florio joining us, different day, different time because of Super Bowl stuff.
Before you go to break, I just would like for you to read that Lincoln Riley quote for people in full. Just because, like, this is exactly what, like, if you want to jump down the rabbit hole, this is the type of thing that Mike is talking about, where it's, oh, well, first you hear it here, and then you hear it here, and then Kliff Kingsbury gets the job in Washington, and then Lincoln Riley says about him getting the job in Washington.
This is a quote from Peter Schrager, who is senior national writer, FoxSports.com and Good Morning Football. USC head coach Lincoln Riley on Caleb Williams, Kliff Kingsbury. Quote, they have a great relationship. It was awesome for Caleb to have Kliff. In a perfect world, would I love a reunion for them? That would be great. But we all know a lot would transpire between now and the draft.
So it's like all of these things that if you wanted to connect dots, you could. That's why I'm kind of with you, where if you can do a lot, I think, in a lot of good, if part of your cause, if your cause isn't selfish, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, like, because he's totally allowed for his cause to be selfish, where I only care about me.
It's the rest of your life, man. This is your professional life.
But if he also is like, I care about me, and I also care about athletes after me that are going to be in the same position, you can say it loudly and proudly, if that's what you want.
There's a way to do it, and you can hire people to help you craft the message.
Well, doesn't it seem like the message is being crafted without having to hire people?
Well, maybe, or with people they've hired. Who knows?
It's very possible.